Hey, my name's Adam, and this is Sidewalk Cupcake. What I mean by a sidewalk cupcake is it looks really cool, but you don't know what it comes from. It's essentially talking about things in the gospel that we don't really have anything that 100% backs it up, but it's a cool thought. It's something to think about. What I want to talk about specifically today is trauma found in the names of the 12 tribes. So we got to set up the story. We all know the story of Joseph in Egypt, but what we may not know is that there's a lot more of the story. In fact, there's a lot of stuff hinted in the competition between Rachel and Leah found in these names. In order to know what I'm talking about, we need to delve into the story of Jacob and his wives. So we know that Jacob wanted to marry Rachel. Everybody knows that part about the story. And he ended up having to marry Leah instead because his uncle Laban tricked him. But what's interesting is in Hebrew culture, whenever somebody gives someone a name, it's actually a prayer to God. For example, the name Samuel or Shmuel in Hebrew means God hears. It's essentially saying God has heard my prayer for a child. And so you could have prayers of gratitude. It could also be prayers asking for something or something that you're struggling with that you're trying to talk to God about. So if we look at what Leah names her first son, it's Reuben. So Reuben in Hebrew, it means see, a son. And in the Tanakh, it says, Leah conceived and bore a son, and named him Reuben, for she declared, it means Yahweh has seen my affliction. It also means, now my husband will love me. Essentially, like, see, I have a son, I'm blessed. It's a reminder to her. But in a way, from what I see, it's also a plea to Jacob, saying, God's blessing me with sons, not Rachel. I have a child. I've been given a son. Our marriage counts more than your marriage with Rachel. You should love me, not her. Well, in verse 33, she conceives again. It says, she conceives again and bears a son, and she names the second son Simeon. Now, Simeon is Shimon in Hebrew. And Shimon means listen or hears. In the Tanakh, it says, she conceived again and bore a son and declared, this is because Yahweh heard that I was unloved and has given me this one also. So she named him Simeon. So she's saying God hears me. So again, you can look at it from a bunch of different angles. You could see it as a reminder to herself of gratitude because God is seeing her, he's blessing her. But it's also her again trying to remind Jacob, God's speaking to you. I have a second son. Why don't you listen to him? Another cool thought about this is that Shimon in Aramaic is where we get the name Simon, which is what the name of Peter was before Christ gave him his new name. Her next son is Levi. Now, Levi in Hebrew, it means joined, attached, clinging, connected. So you can see this almost as she's attached, she's holding on to God, she's begging God. But you could almost see it too as she's clinging to Jacob. She's yearning for connection. She wants to be loved. She wants to feel love from Jacob, and she's not feeling that way. And you can see that being expressed in Levi's name. Something else that's interesting is the name Matthew. His name was Levi. The next son that she has is Judah. Now, Judah means to praise God with your hands, with your actions. And so again, it could be seen on a surface level as she's again showing gratitude for her son because she's saying, I'm doing all the right things. I'm praising God with my hands. Look at my children that I've brought into the world. But it could also be seen as her having the same attitude that's found in the elder brother in the prodigal son. I'm serving you with my hands. I'm praising you with my hands. Where's the love from Jacob? But part of me wonders, is this also a slight, a little bit of a dig towards Rachel? Look, God's blessing me because I actually am the one that deserves the love, not you. See how many sons God is giving me, and he's giving you none. That's too bad. And she's poking that because she knows Rachel is insecure about it. And we can see that it's bothering Rachel because in chapter 30, we see it in verse 1. It says, and when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die. So So you can see she's got that fear. Our marriage doesn't really count. I don't have any kids. She's seen as the wife. I'm nothing, even though she has the favor and the love from Jacob, right? Well, in verse 2, she says, and Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld thee the fruit of the womb? Probably not the best thing to say right there. It's like, what do you want me to do about it? God's the one that's in charge. I don't know why, you're not having kids. Well, she's desperate. She needs to have that status. And so in verse 3 it says, and she said, behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And this was a thing in Hebrew tradition. If you had a handmaid and you were a wife, your handmaid's children counted as your children. And so she's saying, well, if I can't, because I'm infertile, at least you can have kids and they will count as my own. And we've seen a similar thing with Hagar and Abraham. And in verse 4 it says, and she gave Bilhah her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went unto her. Well, Bilhah gets pregnant. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. Now, do you know what Dan means in Hebrew? It means justice or just. Essentially what Rachel is saying is, God is just. See, he's being fair. He's finally given me a son too. See, Leah, you're not the only one that has sons. My marriage counts too. Well, Rachel's handmaid Bilhah gets pregnant again, and she gives birth to Naphtali. Now, Naphtali means my wrestling. Now, remember, Hebrew names are prayers to God. Rachel is saying to God, I'm struggling so much. Why is this happening to me? Why must you not let me have my own children? And that's kind of the problem Rachel has. She's focusing on the negative. She has a son. She has Dan. Her marriage is legitimate, but it's not as many as Leah. She needs as many kids as Leah. She needs to compete. And this negative focus is a huge problem. Now we can see the pettiness in Leah, because what Leah does next is kind of crazy. Now, instead of just going about her business, Leah does something interesting. She gets her own handmaid, Zilpah, and gave her to Jacob. And Zilpah gets pregnant. And do you know what Leah named the son that was born from her handmaid Zilpah? Gad. Do you know what Gad means? A troop or a group of people. Essentially saying, like, I have all these legions of sons. Like, you're never going to catch up to me. And you had a son through a handmaid? I could do that too. Plus, I have my own kids that I had, and I didn't need handmaids. So you can see this bitterness that Leah has. Well, Zilpah had a second son. So she's going tit for tat, right? Because Rachel through Bilhah has had two sons, so Leah's evening it out. Well, the second son that was born through Zilpah was Asher, and that means blessed. So it kind of has that like Instagram #blessed kind of vibe, like kind of gloating, like look how much better my life is than yours, even instead of actually being grateful for blessings. And the way I see it, she's just rubbing it in Rachel's face because she knows it bothers Rachel. And it's the only way that she can feel better about her situation, because Rachel's the one that has Jacob's love and she doesn't. Well, the drama gets worse because Reuben, Leah's oldest son, he goes into the field and he finds mandrakes. And they're these like flowers in the Mediterranean that have roots that kind of look like people. And so that's where the mandrakes thing comes from, and that's why the roots in the Harry Potter, those mandrakes look like people. And they were believed to be fertility, like if you ate the herb, it would make you have higher chances of getting pregnant. So Rachel is desperate. She wants to get pregnant. And Leah said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? It's pretty awkward. So she's just laying it all out on the table. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. But what's crazy is the word hired, and that does translate over into Hebrew. It's sadly ironic, because you have Rachel who can freely get love from Jacob, and you have Leah who has to buy Jacob's love. It isn't equal on both sides when it comes to love. She has to essentially pay to get love from her husband. She has to pay through status. She has to pay she has to pay through keeping the law and being obedient. In verse 17, God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the fifth son. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. So you can look at the name like he's given me my hire. Like God is paying me for the work I'm doing. So you can see that as a great gratitude towards God. But it could also be a spiteful thing towards Rachel. Like, see, I'm the one that actually does righteous things, and that's why God's rewarding me. But I can't help but notice like a subtle undertone. I have to work to get love from my husband. And I've already accepted that it's something that has to be earned. It has to be paid for continually. So she's now looking at her relationship with Jacob as purely transactional. Like, I do this, you do this for me. And you can see that in the name Issachar. God has given me my hire. Well, Leah got pregnant again. And in verse 20, she names her son, her sixth son, Zebulun. Zebulun means dwelling, specifically dwelling in honor. What I see in this is a complete, well, it's again, this is gratitude, right? The outward gratitude, but it also makes me see that Leah's given up on Jacob ever loving her. She's just focused on status now. It's the only thing that she's ever got, and it's the only thing she can hold over Rachel's head. So she's focusing on gaining that status, being exalted, and being seen as a high figure within her community. Now this is where it gets interesting. In verse 22, it says, And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach, which is really sad because she thought God hated her. Just simply because she didn't have the things that her neighbor had, or her sister in this case had. Because she saw herself as inferior to her sister, which is so sad because Leah sees herself, she sees her own self as inferior to Rachel. Rachel's the one that gets all the love. Rachel's the one that Jacob pays all of his attention to. So it's so sad because both of them see themselves as cursed. And both want the thing the other person has instead of being grateful for what we have. So many times we compare ourselves to usually the best part of someone else's outside to the worst part of our inside. How is that fair? And what's really sad is we actually look over the blessings that are given to us in that process. And you can see it because you know what Joseph means in Hebrew. In Hebrew, Yusuf means add another. Essentially, it means this isn't enough. I need another son. This was a miracle. She was infertile and God gave her a son. And instead of loving that son and focusing on that son, she needed another. The next son she had was Benoni. Now we all know him as Benjamin. Do you know what Benoni means in Hebrew? Son of my sorrow. Because she was dying in childbirth. She was so focused on how hard her life was. That's how she left this world. Focusing on the negative. What's interesting is that Jacob renamed Benjamin right after. Benjamin means son on my right hand. And this is my own thinking. A part of me wonders if this name change occurred because he had already seen the damage that had happened to Joseph and Naphtali, but especially Joseph, who was born from Rachel. And at this point, Jacob was really trying to be a better father. Well, that's the sidewalk cupcake for today. What do you guys think? Is there any merit to it? Am I completely off? Tell me below in the comments.